Hi, I'm Joan Lubar, and I am so delighted to be here today to interview one of the most interesting women I've ever met. We're going to be talking to Larene Paul, who has an amazing background as part of helping women become more empowered and finding their place in the world. She was one of those women who really started the women's movement, not one of those you've heard a lot about, but every one of us really needs to thank her for all that she's given to us. So we're going to continue, and I want to introduce you to Larene Paul.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Joan.
Well, Larene, you have such an interesting background, especially because of where you started. I know you were born in Portland, and then your family immediately moved to Medford. So tell us just a little bit about your background as far as school and where you lived, and then we'll get into the work that you've done.
Well, I went to Medford High School, Medford Grade School, and at the end of my grade school years, my dad was transferred to Grants Pass, and I went the next 4 years to Grants Pass High School, and then transferred back to Medford and finished high school and graduated from Medford High in 1944.
Wow. And then I understand you went on to University of Oregon.
I did. Very proud to do that. And I was there for about 2 years. And then my parents needed some financial help, and so I stopped school and went to work.
Well, I think that's where things changed, isn't it?
It certainly did.
And I know you said you worked with the American fruit growers for a while, but then you changed to
the telephone company.
And tell us about that.
This was at that time Pacific Telephone, one of the Bell systems, and it was a telephone company that spread from Washington, Oregon, California. A very big company, one of the biggest in the Bell group. And that was an experience that not everyone should have to go through. But I became a telephone operator at Medford, Oregon.
Well, what I want to ask you about that is, what was it about working as a telephone operator that really changed your outlook?
Well, first of all, I found out that there was no organization at all to represent us, and I felt that there needed to be some kind of organization that could do that, and they didn't have any. And so I began to look for someone who might know how to do this, how to go about getting a union or some kind of organization in the Medford office.
Well, before you did that, what was it that struck you about the treatment of the employees as well as the other benefits?
Well, there were no benefits. The wage rate at that time was, for the operators, 25 cents an hour. And one of the biggest joys that the chief operator at the telephone company had at that time was to take anyone that she felt had done something wrong, whether at her job or outside of the job. She would take them to the little room, the little interrogation room, and work them over until they came out of there crying. And they either went back to work and dried their tears, or they left in tears. I thought that was an awful situation.
And I have to ask you, did you ever go in the interrogation room?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ever come out crying?
No, ma'am.
That speaks to who you were.
I would not allow myself to cry.
Wow. So then something really interesting happened. Some people came to talk to all the employees, didn't they?
Well, they came to talk to some of the employees. They were not allowed in the building, but they were able to get the names, of course, through other employees the names of employees, and they met with us at our homes or at a restaurant or outside the building.
And this was the Communications Workers of America, which was a union out of California?
Well, no, the union really was started in the East. The headquarters was Washington, D.C. And they had started organizing telephone workers from the East Coast, and we were finally being represented, or at least contacted, by representatives from the East.
So what was it that you did that was so instrumental in getting that union up and going?
Well, I talked to every employee that I could about how important it was to belong to the union, what benefits that they would realize if they did belong to the union, and that they would not be going through any interrogation room anymore.
That's good.
So I did my best to organize everyone that became an employee of the company while we were attempting to get a National Labor Relations Board election.
So now you went all over Oregon then, not just in Medford?
For a while I was given a leave of absence from the company and sent to very many of the offices in the state of Oregon, namely Salem, Eugene, even as far away as Pendleton and Klamath Falls, and various offices in the state.
So I want to ask you, were you the only woman that was doing the organizing at the time, or were there men doing it too?
Yes, there were men doing it. Among the men employees, that was the cable splicers, the linemen, the installer repairmen.
But were you the only woman? Because you were representing the operators?
I was not the only woman. There were other women that were also helping talk to people about joining the union, but they did not leave the building and go to other offices. I was the only one that did that at that time.
And that was very unusual for a woman to be doing that.
Yes, indeed.
Did you run into any prejudice or behavior that wasn't really helpful?
I surely did, but nobody took after me with a club or anything. I just got little harassment from other employees or from the company representatives.
Well, as we know, there are other union organizers that really did, in other areas, that really did suffer a lot. So that was very fortunate. But here you were, a woman, one of the only women that really was doing significant work to create the union. And then there was the NLRB election. And what happened with that?
Well, after a lot of organizing around the state, we had an election, and this was in 1949. As a matter of fact, in September of 1949, and we won the election. And when I say we, I mean Communications Workers of America won the election. Following that, then we sat down to negotiate a contract.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time today. I hope to continue this on another video, but let's fast forward, because you did such a good job that you were then asked to move to
San Francisco.
And you became the
secretary to the district vice president.
And from that,
and then
she just did such a good job, and everything she did, that you then went.
I was then promoted to assistant to the not assistant, but administrative assistant to the vice president.
Okay, and after a while you also actually got an area district manager, didn't you?
I became the area director for Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii.
And you stayed in that till you retired?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what that job entailed.
That job entailed handling grievances for all of the employees in that area, up to and including the top level of the company. following those negotiations in terms of grievance handling, if we were unable to resolve the matter successfully, we might, under certain sets of circumstances, send it to arbitration. And then I worked with the attorneys to handle the negotiations at the arbitration level.
So tell me, Larene, on the whole, were there many women at the level that you were at?
No, there were not. There were few. There were people, there were women in isolated places across the country, but there'd probably be one, maybe two, depending on the size of the company, women, but mostly it was managed by the men.
That seemed to have led you to do some other things with women's organizations. So tell me a little bit about one that you were a charter member of.
Well, I became a charter member of the NOW organization, which is National Organization for Women. And that started way back. I hate to tell you, but I cannot remember the year. But I was the charter member of NOW, and we started having meetings. The first one that I attended was in Chicago. We had probably 1,000 or more women there, and this was a real kick for the women to get some kind of recognition.
Absolutely wonderful. So if you could give just one statement to women today, that would really, you've been very inspiring with what you've done, so
well,
what can you say?
I would say that although we have come a long way up to this point, we still have considerable amount of steps to take, and there are times when I know women get very discouraged and feel like they're not making any progress, but all I say to all of you is keep fighting, hang in there, and fight back, and you will make it.
I want to really thank Larene for being part of this today. We have so much more to learn from her, but this is just a little inkling of what powerful women can do.